Russian troop executions and Putin's nuclear display expose military breakdown and trigger an immediate global security alert today. The war in Ukraine exposed a side of the Russian army few imagined and reignited real fears of a nuclear catastrophe. From executions within its own ranks to weapons tests that once seemed fictional, everything suggests the limit of destruction is now tangible. Reports of Russian officers killing their own soldiers shocked the world, while Putin showcased the Poseidon nuclear torpedo and the Skyfall missile. At the same time, Western alliance jets intercepted Russian aircraft intruding on member states, and Trump rushed to speak with Xi Jinping to contain a nuclear-scale crisis spinning out of control. Ukraine blackouts, crowded shelters, and advancing strategic weapons reveal Europe's security collapse already unfolding across terrified civilian neighborhoods. Ukraine spends entire nights in the dark under drones and missiles as the United States and Russia trade nuclear threats. Global balance is unraveling fast, and any small mistake could push the planet straight into a war no one would be able to stop. Everywhere there's the feeling time has run out. No treaty can slow the advance of new weapons, neither hypersonic systems nor nuclear submarines. The world is talking about nuclear shelters again, and millions fear a disaster that now feels inevitable. Europeans already argue over guaranteed spots in shelters. Nuclear danger rises as the United States and Russia move directly, while global leadership fails to contain escalation. With Trump's nuclear threat now and Russia's atomic missile launches, tests or not, do you believe major powers would dare use such apocalyptic warheads? In World War II, the United States did. So tell me, who would have that courage today? Just a reminder, this report is based on news from Sky News, The New York Times, BBC, The Guardian, Al Jazeera, Sputnik, RT News, and Telegram. But before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription means a lot and helps you stay updated on every story about the raging nations. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up to help this project grow even more. An investigation revealed that more than 100 Russian officers executed their own soldiers during the invasion of Ukraine. It happened right on the front line when soldiers tried to retreat or report abuses. Anyone who questioned orders was killed. Just like that, no trial, no return. Reports show that Russian commanders created a system of torture and extortion. Soldiers were sent on suicide missions as punishment with no food, ammo, or backup. Many vanished, and families never learned what happened. It was punishment disguised as military duty. These executions began in the first days of the war and worsened after defeats in Donetsk and Luhansk. Witnesses say generals ordered public killings to set an example. The result was the opposite. Fear grew, and desertion became the only possible escape. The hierarchy collapsed. Many soldiers fled because staying on the front line was more dangerous than deserting. Amid confusing orders, drunk officers, and senseless punishments, the Russian army became internal chaos, where the enemy was no longer just the Ukrainian army. Analysts say the moral collapse of Russian troops shows an army at war with itself. There is no more command or discipline, only fear and hatred. When terror comes from within, the external enemy becomes secondary. And the worst, the peak of this madness is still to come. Testimonies confirm summary executions, torture, and growing desertions, revealing Russian disciplinary collapse and an uncontrolled internal war today. Independent journalists from Russia discovered that, on several fronts, soldiers were executed point-blank for refusing suicidal orders. Witnesses said officers buried the bodies in shallow graves and threatened others. Anyone who failed would share the same fate. Desperate families said they were blackmailed by military intermediaries. They paid huge sums to keep their sons away from the most dangerous fronts. Even so, many vanished without a trace. The cruelest part, commanders pretended to know nothing. Human rights groups already classify all this as extrajudicial execution in wartime. If confirmed, the Kremlin could be charged with war crimes, leaving Russia even more isolated on the international stage and under growing global pressure. Inside Russia's high command, fear has shifted. Now it's of a silent rebellion. Authority among generals and officers is collapsing, and reports of mass desertion spread. Putin feels control slipping away as the risk of a mutiny within his own army grows. All this internal brutality is just the beginning. Surrounded by chaos and distrust, Putin reacts the only way he knows, by showing power. This time, he puts his most feared nuclear arsenal on the table, trying to prove strength at a moment when even his allies doubt him. Journalists report point-blank killings, extortion and shallow graves, while Russian command fractures and unrest explodes inside barracks nationwide. Putin announced the successful test of the nuclear torpedo Poseidon, a weapon straight out of a nightmare. Powered by atomic energy, the torpedo can cross oceans and trigger radioactive tsunamis, destroying entire cities. It proves Moscow's intent to spread fear worldwide. Experts say the Poseidon changes everything in submarine warfare. It can travel thousands of kilometers silently and explode near enemy coasts, releasing radiation for decades. A single weapon like this could erase an entire country from the map. The Kremlin said this test was an inevitable response to Western alliance actions. The launch was reportedly carried out by the Belgorod submarine, the largest in the world. Russia plans to install the Poseidon in 4 more subs, turning the Arctic into a permanent nuclear fortress. Putin also confirmed the test of the Burevestnik cruise missile, known as Skyfall. It uses nuclear propulsion and can fly for days, dodging radar and hitting any point on the planet. It's as if Russia were saying, there's no safe place for anyone. These tests put the West on high alert. The Western alliance raised its nuclear readiness and reinforced defenses. The most frightening part is that this is only the beginning. The next reactions will show how far Putin is willing to go to provoke his enemies. Poseidon and Skyfall take center stage with Belgorod operational as the alliance races nuclear readiness to maximum levels. Right after the Russian announcement, Polish jets had to act to intercept invading Russian aircraft. The tense operation made it clear that Moscow is testing the Western alliance's limits. No one wants to shoot first, but everyone is ready to do it. Poland's defense minister said these violations are becoming far too frequent. As a result, the Western alliance placed its fighters on full alert. Now, any unidentified Russian aircraft can be treated as a real threat, a dangerously close step to open conflict. In Estonia, the situation worsened. Soldiers detected drones crashing near an infantry base. It all points to Russian espionage, and the Western alliance responded by reinforcing defenses with radars and anti-air missiles. The message is clear. The Allies' patience with Moscow is running out. Norway, which had kept a low profile until now, also raised its tone. It sent fighter jets north and placed naval units on standby. The entire eastern flank of the Western alliance is now on watch, as if the Baltic had returned to the Cold War's most tense days. Provocations are piling up, and the mood already feels like pre-conflict. Trump tries to act as mediator, speaking directly with Xi Jinping, while Moscow threatens to send warheads to Cuba. If this diplomatic bomb really goes off, no one will come out unscathed. Russian Baltic incursions scramble Allied jets, while the nuclear specter in Cuba returns and the region hardens posture. Trump confirmed he spoke with Xi Jinping to try to find a way out of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The goal is to show that the United States still has a strong voice, even in a scenario where Moscow and Beijing dictate the pace of nuclear threats and military responses. People close to the White House say Trump wants to use China's economic power to pressure Putin. He believes Beijing could be the only real brake on Russian advances. The problem is that China plays both sides and profits as long as the war goes on. Xi Jinping maintains a discourse of neutrality but acts with cold strategy. He condemns nuclear weapons while blaming the West for pushing Russia to the edge. Deep down, he's buying time and gaining prestige while the Western alliance wears itself out. Meanwhile, Moscow raises the stakes. A senior Russian official said the country could deploy nuclear weapons in Cuba if Washington continues sanctions and sends more missiles to Ukraine. It's the Cold War revisited, but with far deadlier warheads. All this tension feels like 1962 again, but with infinitely greater destructive power. And the worst part, neither side seems willing to back down. The next sequence shows what happens when Putin decides to prove his strength by launching hundreds of drones and missiles over Ukraine. Trump speaks with Xi, seeking way out as Moscow restores Cuba to the nuclear map and tensions resurface. In the middle of the night, Russia launched more than 600 drones and 50 missiles over several Ukrainian cities. It was a coordinated attack that brought down power grids and left millions without electricity. Hospitals stopped, trains halted, and the country plunged into chaos. Kiev's forces say they intercepted most of the drones, but the ones that got through caused heavy destruction. They used Iranian-made Shahed models designed for long-range saturation attacks. Substations and fuel depots caught fire and burned for hours. 3 people, including a child, were killed after Russian missiles hit residential buildings. The Ukrainian government said it was one of the most violent attacks since the start of the war. The psychological impact is brutal. No one has slept peacefully for months. Pokrovsk has become the new epicenter of the war. Russian troops invaded entire neighborhoods and are advancing through the streets. The city is strategic. If it falls, Russia gains direct access to the central plains of Ukraine, opening the path for a much broader offensive. Ukraine struggles to resist, but the siege tightens. Putin celebrates as if he's already won, calling it a symbolic victory. But while he celebrates, Trump prepares to respond differently, ordering the United States to resume nuclear weapons testing. Mass drone and missile attack collapses power, kills civilians, and turns Pokrovsk into the objective of the advance. Trump ordered the United States to immediately resume nuclear testing, something unseen for decades. The reason is simple: to respond to threats from Russia and China. The Pentagon has already begun preparations in Nevada for underground experimental detonations. The news spread worldwide. Analysts say Trump wants to restore US military supremacy and prove that the United States still leads the game. But the reaction was immediate. Moscow vowed to do the same, reigniting the nuclear race and alarming even its allies. The Kremlin reacted with fury. Spokespeople called the American move a hostile act and said new Russian warheads are ready for testing. Putin wants to show he won't be intimidated and can respond in kind, or even worse. China joined the debate, condemning Trump's decision and calling for an immediate return to multilateral talks. Xi Jinping fears the resumption of tests will push the world into an uncontrollable cycle, with multiple powers testing warheads simultaneously and causing environmental disasters. With the 3 powers threatening each other, the atmosphere recalls the height of the Cold War. Only now, the technology is far more destructive. What comes next shows how close the planet is to repeating history's worst mistakes on a nuclear scale. The United States resumes nuclear tests, Russia and China respond, and Cold War atmosphere returns with dangerous force. The Pentagon confirmed that the new US tests will use next-generation miniaturized warheads designed for hypersonic missiles. The goal is to see how they perform under extreme conditions and ensure an almost instant nuclear response if the United States is attacked. Experts warn that this type of technology increases the risk of fatal mistakes. A conventional missile could be mistaken for a nuclear strike and trigger automatic retaliation. In a tense scenario like today's, a simple error could end the planet in minutes. Russia responded by putting submarines armed with Poseidon torpedoes on alert in the Arctic. American satellites have already detected the movement. It's a clear warning from Moscow. If the United States tests, Russia is also ready to display its destructive power. The UN is trying to calm tensions, but no one seems willing to give in. Diplomats speak, but the powers only listen to themselves. Each side claims to be the victim and blames the other for reigniting the nuclear nightmare the world swore never to relive. The planet has now entered a total danger zone. The powers show strength but have already lost control of the situation. Everything we've seen so far, from internal executions to chaos in Ukraine, seems to converge toward a point where any spark could trigger the irreversible. Miniaturized warheads for hypersonics raise lethal error risk, and submarines with Poseidon on alert expand extreme danger worldwide. Putin decided to intensify conventional attacks to show he still commands the battlefield. Russian missiles and drones struck Ukraine again, targeting military bases and power grids. It's Moscow's way of proving that the war is far from over. Ukrainian air defenses keep firing non-stop, shooting down most Shahed drones and Caliber missiles. Still, multiple explosions hit rail lines and substations, cutting transport and leaving entire cities isolated in the middle of winter. Satellite images show destroyed areas and huge craters in residential zones. Hospitals run on generators, and volunteers report shortages of medicine and fuel. The war has become a machine of exhaustion, and no one seems to have the strength to keep fighting. Putin tries to turn the disaster into political speech. He claims the attacks prove resistance against the Western siege. Russian propaganda shows the ruins as trophies, calling civilian victims a necessary price for a war he started himself. Ukraine responds by asking for more defenses and urgent help. The military stalemate and nuclear race now go hand in hand, and the world is starting to realize this conflict could have a cost no one wants to pay: the future of humanity itself. New missiles and drones destroy infrastructure, isolate cities, and force appeals for additional defenses amid a prolonged stalemate. The whole world watches anxiously as the United States, Russia, and China trade increasingly direct threats. Negotiations in Geneva have failed, and no one wants to back down. A miscalculation or a radar error could ignite the spark everyone fears. Behind the scenes, Washington speeds up the production of new warheads and conducts tests in the Pacific. Moscow strengthens its Arctic bases, and Beijing sends ships to the South China Sea. Each move is seen as a provocation, and fear of a real confrontation grows daily. Meanwhile, Ukraine struggles to survive with what little it has. Bombings and blackouts have become routine, and millions face the cold without power or food. The country has become a symbol of resistance and of suffering the world pretends not to see. Trump says his tests are necessary to maintain peace, while Putin vows to respond in kind. The planet relives the logic of mutually assured destruction, one where no one wins and everyone loses. Now the nuclear clock is ticking against us. Scientists warn that reactivating old warheads could release radiation and cause permanent damage. Yet the powers ignore the risks. The conflict has moved from the military to the psychological, a battle of ego and power, where every leader wants to prove who's in charge. Powers trade threats, talks collapse, nuclear production accelerates, and humanitarian crisis worsens with scientific warnings about radiation worldwide. Humanity has reached a point where deterrence and self-destruction have become almost the same thing. Three nuclear powers openly challenge each other, and none seem willing to stop. Civilians keep dying while generals argue over who will press the button first. With US nuclear tests underway, political chaos spreads. Russia and China use this to justify their own nuclear programs. The planet has become a power laboratory, where each explosion serves more to intimidate than to defend. The crisis within the Russian army keeps getting worse. Internal executions and moral collapse expose a regime falling apart from within. Soldiers who should protect the nation have become victims of the same system they swore to serve. Proof of total command failure. The world hangs in suspense. Everything depends on a handful of leaders driven by pride and fear. Trust between nations has vanished, and it feels like no one is in control anymore. The war has become a roulette game, and the prize could be the end of civilization. Deterrence blurs into self-destruction. Multiplied tests expose Russian military crisis, and concentrated decisions heighten global suspense over outcome. With Trump's nuclear threat now and Russia's missile launches, even if just for testing or display, do you believe the world powers would have the courage to start a war using these apocalyptic warheads? In World War II, the United States had that courage, but who would today? Thanks so much for sticking around until the end of the video. You're awesome, and I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates on the raging nations. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up to help this project grow even more.